Before his death, Andre the Giant finally broke his silence, revealing the wrestlers he hated the most for years. The gentle giant was known for his larger-than-life persona both inside and outside the ring, but behind the stories and his towering presence, there were animosities, grudges, and names he kept hidden until the end. Who did Andre despise most, and what led to this rare outburst? Was it jealousy, disrespect, or something totally different? Well, he hated Randy Savage, and much of it hated him with a passion. Well, let's find out the explosive confessions that Andre made just before he passed away, uncovering the grudges he carried all his life. 10. Randy Savage. Andre the Giant couldn't stand Randy Savage, and not for the reasons you might expect. This wasn't about ego, match results, or stolen spotlight. Andre had a very specific, very personal reason: baby oil. That silky sheen macho man Randy Savage wore like armor in every match drove Andre mad. It's easy to forget just how uncomfortable life could be for a man of Andre's size. Showers and hotels weren't built for someone towering over 7 feet and weighing more than 500 pounds, so after each grueling match, covered in sweat and stage makeup, Andre would struggle just to get clean. But when Savage stepped into the ring lathered up like he was prepping for a bodybuilding show, it made the Giant's life that much harder. The oil didn't just stay on Savage, it ended up all over Andre, and every time it did, it meant another exhausting, near impossible scrub down. Andre wasn't just irritated, he was angry. Savage's own brother, Lanny Poffo, admitted that Randy knew Andre hated it. Everyone knew. But Randy wouldn't back down. Andre's gimmick is being a giant, he once snapped. Mine is baby oil. To Randy, making an exception for Andre was a slippery slope, literally. If I make one for him, he argued, I'll have to make one for everybody. He was stubborn, determined, maybe even a little defiant. But in Andre's world, that kind of attitude didn't win you any favors, especially when it meant making an already difficult life harder. And Andre could be difficult too. If he didn't like you, you would know. He didn't need to say it, he'd rough you up in the ring, make you earn every bump. He didn't play games when he felt disrespected. So when Randy refused to ditch the baby oil, Andre stopped pulling punches. Their matches were stiff, their backstage interactions colder than a hotel tile floor. And while Randy might have had the guts to stand his ground, it came at a cost, a very large, very strong, very French cost. 9. Hulk Hogan. Andre the Giant didn't like Hulk Hogan. That's the truth. And it's because Andre came from a time when wrestling was sacred, protected like a secret past between generations. Hogan, on the other hand, came in loud, young, and, at least in Andre's eyes, disrespectful. He was flashy, self-assured, and believed he could be just as big and strong as the Giant himself. Big mistake. In those early years, Andre didn't see Hogan as a peer. He saw him as another kid playing tough in a business he didn't yet understand. So he beat on him, not in the kind of friendly, showbiz way. No. Andre made sure Hogan felt every bump, every slam. It was his way of saying, you don't belong here yet. Hogan later admitted that Andre had no patience for his arrogance, no tolerance for someone who hadn't paid their dues. He said himself, he had fun beating on me. But Andre wasn't some bitter old giant, he just loved the business too much to let anyone stroll in and turn it into a circus. Wrestling wasn't entertainment to him. It was an art form, a craft he protected with every fiber of his being. When Hogan finally started showing respect, when he stopped pretending and started learning, things began to change. But that tension never really left. By the time WrestleMania 3 rolled around, Hogan had become the biggest star in the business. He had the spotlight, the fans, and the merchandise. But behind the scenes, he was still terrified of the one man who could make or break that moment, Andre. And with good reason. Andre wasn't someone you crossed, not even by accident. Hogan was so nervous before the match, he actually wrote down how he wanted it to go, something unheard of back then. If Andre had known Hogan scripted the match, Hogan himself said there would have been a red and yellow blood spot in the ring. That's how real the fear was. And yet, Andre followed that script, or rather, he allowed it to happen. Not because he suddenly loved Hogan, but because he respected the moment, and perhaps finally respected the man. Bobby Heenan, who managed Andre during that match, said Andre knew this was his last big run. He chose to pass the torch. But if Andre had wanted to crush Hogan in the ring that night, he would have. 8. Big John Studd. If there was one man who truly tested Andre the Giant's patience again and again, it was Big John Studd. Studd didn't just compete against Andre, he tried to replace him. That was his first mistake. He wasn't subtle about it either. He went around telling people he was going to be the new giant. He even started taking growth hormones, like size alone could crown him. For Andre, that was an insult. Imagine telling the one man who defined the term giant that you were coming for his throne. You might as well spit on the legacy he built. In one infamous match in Des Moines, Iowa, Studd crossed a line that had nothing to do with fists or promos. He stepped over the top rope. Now that might seem small, but in the unwritten code of wrestling, that was Andre's move. His symbol. His moment. And he had told Studd, politely, firmly, repeatedly, not to do it. Studd kept doing it anyway. That night, Andre snapped. He beat the man so badly that Studd picked up his bags, walked out of the locker room, and didn't come back. He didn't return that night. Perhaps it was never on Andre's mind. And if you ever wondered whether the hatred was mutual, well, let's just say Studd learned to keep his distance. Maybe he started out thinking he could match Andre, even surpass him. But when you get thrown around by a 500-pound mountain of fury and pride, that kind of talk tends to die down fast. 7. Kamala. At first glance, you'd think Andre and Kamala were made for each other in the ring. Two towering giants. Larger than life. Booked to clash in arenas across the country. But behind the curtain, Andre disliked Kamala. It started in 1982, back when Kamala, also James Harris, was still finding his feet in the business. In his first match with Andre the Giant, something went wrong. It was a misstep, and it happens all the time in wrestling. But Andre didn't handle it with grace. He called Kamala a dumb SOB in the middle of the ring, loud and sharp. Then he came at him. So Kamala fought back, right there in the ring. Fists flying. No script. No performance. It wasn't about wrestling anymore. It was personal. And that was just night one. The next night, Kamala showed up with a .357 Magnum in his pocket. Kamala entered Andre's dressing room, pointing his finger at the giant's nose and resting his hand on the gun for safety, and you'd think Andre would have stood his ground, but the moment Kamala stepped up, Andre's hands shot into the air. He had a big smile on and he said, "Sorry boss, I didn't mean it." He backed down not because Kamala was bigger, but because he was done playing. After that, things changed. Andre was never hostile toward Kamala again. Respect was forced into place, but don't mistake that for friendship. Kamala made it clear in later years, Andre wasn't the gentle giant people loved on TV. He had a nasty attitude, Kamala said, temperamental, rude to the fans, rude to the boys. And while Andre eventually worked matches with Kamala all over the country, the respect was laced with tension. Kamala didn't trust him. Not really. He kept that gun nearby for a while, just in case the giant snapped again. Andre may not have hated Kamala after that moment, but it's fair to say he never forgot it either. For once, Andre wasn't the one people tiptoed around. He was the one on the defensive, and that stuck with him. Maybe it taught him something. Or maybe it just scarred his pride. 6. The Ultimate Warrior. To Andre, the Ultimate Warrior was the walking embodiment of everything wrong with the direction wrestling was headed: loud, reckless, unteachable, and worst of all, disrespectful. It was about how the Ultimate Warrior treated the ring, and more importantly, how he treated the people in it. By the time Andre and the Ultimate Warrior shared a ring, Andre was in pain. His body was failing, his back a mess, his knees barely hanging on. And yet he still showed up, still performed, because that's what professionals did. But the Ultimate Warrior barreled through matches like a bull on fire, no finesse, no care for pacing, no attention to his opponent's safety. He hit hard, he moved fast, and he didn't slow down even when Andre told him to. Andre didn't suffer fools, and the Ultimate Warrior was no exception. During one of their early house show runs, the Ultimate Warrior got careless. He slammed into Andre without warning, stiff and wild. At that point, Andre already had enough. According to stories passed around the locker room like ghost tales, the Giant knocked the Ultimate Warrior down, one blow to remind him that being jacked and painted up like a comic book hero didn't mean a thing if you couldn't respect the business or the man who paved the way. In some cities, they tried to mask it with squash matches, 10-second bouts where Andre barely had to move. He hated those too, but not as much as he hated sharing real ring time with the Ultimate Warrior. If 10 seconds spared him 2 minutes of chaos, he took the 10. That's how much he loathed being in the Ultimate Warrior's orbit. And yet, oddly enough, the hatred didn't seem mutual, at least not openly. The Ultimate Warrior never spoke with the same venom. Maybe he didn't notice, or maybe he just didn't care. That was the Ultimate Warrior's way. He was too caught up in his own mystique, in the power of parts unknown, to worry about what Andre the Giant thought of him. 5. Hacksaw Jim Duggan. Andre the Giant had a complicated relationship with many in the wrestling world, but with Hacksaw Jim Duggan it was personal in a different way. It wasn't pure hatred like he reserved for the Ultimate Warrior or Big John Studd, but that didn't mean there weren't moments of genuine irritation. Because if there's one thing Andre didn't like, it was chaos. And with Duggan's 2x4 waving, flag-wielding, screaming entrance, chaos was always close behind. You see, Andre the Giant hated unpredictability, especially when it came from someone who didn't understand how to pace themselves in the ring. He could be generous. He could elevate someone with a single moment. But he had to want to. Duggan, early in his career, was just another loudmouth with a mask, the convict, as they called him in Hawaii, going up against the most feared man in the business. Andre didn't have time for rookies who didn't know what they were doing, and Duggan back then had no clue. He admitted it himself. But he survived that match, and Andre, strangely, remembered him. Years later, Duggan got his moment in Madison Square Garden. There were over 20,000 fans, his name was on the marquee, and he was standing across the ring from the Giant. It was a moment that could have gone wrong in so many ways. But it didn't. Because by then, Duggan had earned something few could, Andre's tolerance, maybe even a little respect. That didn't mean Andre went easy on him. One night, after knocking Hacksaw to the mat, Andre climbed to the ropes and, with a mischievous grin, dropped all 500 pounds on him, sat down like a wrecking ball and just flattened the man. Bobby Heenan screamed for it. Duggan never forgot it. But perhaps the most famous moment between them came when Duggan hit the Giant with the 2x4. It was the one and only time Andre was knocked out in the ring. Blood was pouring from Duggan's lip, an accidental thumb from Andre had split it open. And yet, in that mess of adrenaline and pain, Duggan found his footing, swung the wood, and made history. Now, did Hacksaw Jim Duggan hate Andre the Giant? Not a chance. If anything, he was in awe of him. Grateful. The scar under his mustache is a reminder of that gratitude. He played cards with Andre. He traveled with him. He knew the lonely man behind the myth, the guy who couldn't fit in airplane seats, couldn't hide in a crowd, couldn't go anywhere without being stared at. Andre didn't hand out friendship freely, but Duggan got closer than most. 4. Bam Bam Bigelow. Andre the Giant despised Bam Bam Bigelow. Andre believed he was the superstar, the one who transcended wrestling, whose presence in a room could silence even the loudest egos. So when a young, cocky Bigelow strutted into WWF in the late 80s claiming he was making huge money and throwing his weight around the locker room, it didn't sit right with the Giant. Andre had a unique way of humbling people who got too big for their boots. And he didn't just talk, he acted. One night at Madison Square Garden, Bigelow stepped into the ring thinking he was going to work a standard match. But Andre had other plans. According to Bret Hart, who witnessed the encounter, Andre got his hands on Bigelow and nearly killed him. Andre squashed him, brutally and deliberately. It was a message the entire locker room understood loud and clear. After that, Bigelow's ego was deflated like a cheap beach ball. Whatever dreams he had of being top dog, Andre stomped them out, along with, reportedly, Bigelow's head. Now Bigelow didn't exactly keep quiet about the incident. Years later, in shoot interviews, he described Andre as a big, mean, smelly giant who, in his words, tried to kill him in the ring. He recalled being stepped on, choked, and humiliated. And he didn't stop there. He also told the infamous story of Bad News Allen getting literally sat on by Andre, who, after a long day of tequila and clamato, couldn't hold it in. Let's just say it wasn't a pretty sight or smell. Bigelow recounted the incident with laughter, but you could still hear the lingering bitterness in his voice. Because unlike many wrestlers who idolized Andre, Bam Bam felt targeted. He was the feeling, however, was not mutual in quite the same way. Andre didn't spend his time plotting against Bigelow. If anything, Andre barely acknowledged him beyond that MSG match. To Andre, Bam Bam was just another hot-headed rookie who needed to learn the business. But to Bigelow, Andre was a towering, destructive force who literally left a mark. By the time Bigelow returned to WWF in the 90s, more mature, more professional, Andre was already gone, dead. But the scars from their confrontation lingered. In Bigelow's world, Andre was the giant who taught him the hardest lesson of his career. And in Andre's world, Bam Bam Bigelow was just another name on a long list of wrestlers who forgot that in his ring, there was no room for ego, only respect. 3. Bad News Brown. On a long ride between towns with the bus full of wrestling's biggest names, Andre, relaxed and chatty in the back, let a racial slur slip from his lips. The N-word. He may not have meant it for anyone in particular, but there was someone on that bus who didn't take it lightly. Bad News Brown, real name Alan Coage, was a man who had built his life around discipline, strength, and pride. He didn't care if you were a 7-foot French legend or a locker room deity, respect went both ways. And when he heard Andre use that word, he stood up and called the giant out. "You better watch your mouth," he warned. Andre didn't say a word at first. But later, as tension simmered, he snapped, "Go F*** yourself. That was the wrong move." Brown demanded the bus be pulled over, right there, right then. He was ready to settle it face to face. Andre, for all his strength, didn't get off that bus. Maybe he realized the line he'd crossed. Maybe he knew Bad News wasn't bluffing. Stan Hansen tried to cool things down, sensing how serious it had become. Hulk Hogan later admitted he thought Bad News was about to pull a gun. He'd never seen anyone talk to Andre like that before. The next morning, Bad News waited right by the elevator. Andre stepped off, and Brown was there, calm but ready. "Let's go outside," he said. Andre didn't move. So they talked, man to man. Bad News told him straight, "I never insult your people. Don't insult mine." And in that moment, Andre, the unshakable, unstoppable giant, apologized. The damage wasn't undone, and the friendship never truly formed, but the respect was carved in stone. They kept their distance for years, the tension lingering like a bad bruise. But before Andre passed in 1993, the two finally talked. Whatever anger remained, they buried it. 2. The Iron Sheik. Andre the Giant loathed the Iron Sheik with the slow-boiling fury of a man who had had enough. Enough of the mouth. The arrogance. The disrespect. If you were in the locker room back then, you didn't need to ask, you could feel it. There was tension when Sheik walked into the room. And when Andre was there, that tension could turn ice cold. The Sheik's loud, erratic personality made him a magnet for controversy. Even post-retirement, when his profanity-laced tweets, crafted by someone else, became internet gold. But back in the ring, there was nothing funny about it for Andre. Hulk Hogan, who saw it firsthand, said Andre once snapped and nearly killed Sheik in the ring. And it wasn't just the trash talk. Bobby the Brain Heenan recalled how much Andre hated the way Sheik treated enhancement talent, the weekend warriors who stepped into the ring for a few extra bucks and the love of the show. Sheik apparently saw them as punching bags. Andre saw them as hard-working guys trying to make ends meet. That didn't sit right. Andre had a code: respect, humility, honor, and Sheik broke all three. There were rumors, too, that Sheik's antics backstage, his constant loudness, and maybe even his habits outside the ring, rubbed people the wrong way. Andre wasn't known to explain himself. If he didn't like you, you'd know. Tom Pritchard, who spent years around both men, once said that Andre didn't operate in shades of gray. He either loved you or hated your guts. Sheik landed squarely in the latter camp. And if Andre didn't like you, he had a way of letting you know. He might lay on you in the ring just a little too long. Make you look foolish. Or, as stories go, blow rancid breath in your face. Or let one rip mid-hold. 1. Jake the Snake Roberts. There was one man who could make Jake the Snake Roberts feel like the snake in his bag was the lesser threat, and that was Andre the Giant. Jake Roberts didn't hate Andre. In fact, he adored him. But Andre, let's just say, for a while, he wasn't too fond of Jake. Andre the Giant didn't trust easily. His size made him a spectacle everywhere he went. But in the ring, respect was his currency. And he didn't hand it out cheaply. When Jake Roberts first stepped into the ring with him, Andre didn't just ignore him, he erased him. It was the kind of match that makes the audience fidget in their seats and mutter, "What the hell is this?" Jake got nothing. No moment. No move. No mercy. Just the slow, suffocating presence of 500 pounds making him feel like a mosquito buzzing against a wall. Jake was furious. Not just at the match, but at the disrespect. Most wrestlers would have swallowed that anger, knowing Andre had the power to break them in half with a flick. But Jake stormed into Andre's locker room, face red, voice loud, and called the Giant out. And Andre didn't toss him out. He didn't even shout. He just nodded. That's what he wanted all along, to know that Jake Roberts had guts. From that day on, the dynamic changed. But that didn't stop the torment. Andre once stood on Jake's hair and yanked his arms until he nearly tore his scalp off. He once knocked Jake flat and collapsed onto him, 500 pounds slamming down like a building coming down in slow motion. Jake thought his ribs were broken. Couldn't breathe. Could barely move. But as he lay there gasping for air, Andre laughed. Then farted. A giant's fart, 40 seconds long, vibrating Jake's chest like a damn earthquake. Jake says he felt like he was being haunted by the ghost of a gas leak. But still, Jake loved him. And it's because Andre wasn't just a giant in size. He was a giant in pain. In strength. In mystery. He was a man who could drink 48 beers on an 80-mile road trip and never once stop to pee. A man who chased college kids for throwing beer cans, then flipped their car with them inside. Jake saw all of that. He respected all of that. And once Andre knew that, the respect came back around. So when Andre named the wrestlers he hated most, it came as no surprise that Jake wasn't at the top. But he wasn't far from it either.